Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. And this is our first show of 2023. Now we are going to have a little bit of a roundup of some of the stuff that happened last year and all that kind of stuff, but that's going to come maybe in next week's show because I thought, new year, let's get right back to it. And there's a lot of news we've missed over the Christmas break. So with that and a bunch of new products to talk about, let's get going. We're going to begin the show with a bit of news that actually was out at the start of December last year. We just didn't cover it at the time. But it is a very big bit of news for us hobby electronics, computery people, because the Raspberry Pi has been the cornerstone of our hobby for a very long time. And as everyone knows who's tried to buy one in the last couple of years, really, it's not really been possible at all. The supply chain woes have hit everybody very hard, but for anyone that wanted to buy a Raspberry Pi, it really did seem impossible and quite gloomy for a long time. However, it looks like the corner there is turning and things will soon be getting much better. So on the 12th of December, Eben Upton published a blog on the Raspberry Pi, blog, which basically was, the title says it all. It's good news on the supply chain update. Now, it is broadly good news. There's a couple of caveats to that good news, but the long and short of it is they now are selling single unit sales again. They put 100,000, I think, of every board aside. It says in the blog post right here. I'm not going to go through this in excruciating detail. I'm going to link it in the description so you can read it yourself. It's a really fantastic article with a lot of different elements to it, but I will mention a couple of things now. Firstly, single unit sales is something that we haven't seen in a while from Raspberry Pi. Some people got very upset when Raspberry Pi seemed to focus on its industrial and large order users, as it were, or vendors, shoppers? I'm not in the industry, I don't know the words for this kind of thing. The people buying lots of Pis at once for their factory or whatever. People seem to get quite upset that Raspberry Pi were doing that, but I wonder whether this is because some people don't understand the difference between the Raspberry Pi Foundation, which is the charitable and educational arm of Raspberry Pi, and Raspberry Pi as a company, which is like any other company. It makes sense to serve your larger customers. And I know some people said, well, if it wasn't for us small customers, they'd never have the larger customers, but that was then and this is now. And when you're going through supply chain hell and mostly absorbing all of that supply chain hell yourself, which is what Raspberry Pi has mostly done, until now, we'll get onto that, they need to concentrate on that stuff. I understand that. I know some people will think I'm cozying up to Raspberry Pi for no reason, but I can see the business logical sense of that. I'm not running a big business, but if I was, that's probably the same decision I'd make. However, there's a few things here that are worth noting. As I said, Raspberry Pi have traditionally taken supply chain hits on themselves and they've just absorbed that cost to try and keep the cost the same for everybody. That's going to be changing. There's a few things that are going to cost a little bit more. So the Raspberry Pi, the 2GB Raspberry Pi 4 is back to the $45 price point, in that that's where it was originally. I think it was brought down at some point. The Compute Module 4, which has a $5 price increase across all variants. And the one that's, I think some people are going to have the bigger opinions on is that the Pi Zero, which has traditionally always been just $5, is going to be $10, and the Zero W is going to be from $10 up to $15, which I personally still think is incredibly reasonable. $10 for a tiny credit card-sized computer which runs Linux is pretty good in my book, but still. However, here's a really fun thing. This is one of the things I really like about it. The upside is that once they return to volume availability this year, there's not going to be single unit limitations. And the Zero has been one of the hardest Raspberry Pis to get a hold of for a long time. I own two, and I've wanted to buy many more than that. So I'm very glad to hear that those things will be back too. There's a few other things in this blog post that I won't go into now. You can read it for yourself. And of course, I'm sure this is going to have widely different opinions from lots of different people, what with Raspberry Pi being the behemoth, as it were, of the hobby computing world. Regardless of where you stand on whether Raspberry Pi should have focused on their industry people or focused on the single-use hobby people, and whatever you think of the updates in the cost of the Raspberry Pis, it does seem that things are going to start getting to a semblance of normality at some point this year, I hope. And of course, that is fundamentally going to be a good thing for all of us who want to tinker and play with more Raspberry Pi projects. Up next, we're going to look at the projects that won the Electromaker of the Month for December. Now, Electromaker of the Month is something that we ran for the entirety of last year, and we're going to continue running it this year, although there are going to be a few changes coming up in the contest, which we'll go into in the coming weeks. But essentially, every single project that gets uploaded to the community section of the Electromaker website, which anyone can upload to, by the way, you can, I can, anyone that has a free Electromaker account can log their project on the Electromaker project page. All of those projects each month are looked over by an independent panel of judges, and they pick the top 3 3 projects that they think are worth winning prizes. And prizes are fun, and we love prizes. And the prizes for the whole of the last year have been from Nordic Semiconductor, a bunch of different prototyping kits for Bluetooth Low Energy and various different things. There's a Thingy 91 in there too for cellular IoT stuff. Yes, every single month people have been winning. And now we're going to take a look at the ones that won in December. Now, there's a blog post that accompanies this, and I'll be linking that in the description of this video. I do suggest going to that blog post because, as well as actually just giving a quick roundup of all of these projects, you can jump straight out to the projects themselves and see exactly all the components that went into it and the write-up that the actual makers themselves made for them. The winner for December was someone who we've seen before. There was an amazing project recently that showed up on the Electromaker website. That was a soft body robotics project. Now, soft body robotics is difficult enough as it is, but what makes this special is that Lite 3D28 3D prints all of their own molds and uses quite simple but still very, very complex ways of controlling soft body robotics. In this case, it's using compressed air, and to actually control the robot is an Arduino with some flex sensors. So now that I've told you that, you'll sort of understand why this is so incredible in many ways. When he closes his hand, the flex sensors and the Arduino based on his wrist realize that he is closing his hand, and it sends a signal to the soft body robot hand, which grabs down. Now, obviously, this is just an early prototype. All it does is open and close, but it is still an incredible thing when you realize that all of this was made at home using what could be considered fairly basic maker tools. A 3D printer, some silicon that you can buy online, and a basic Arduino. I think it was an Arduino Nano BLE 33 cents that was used in the project. And I want to play that video just one more time because it kind of amazes me. So yes, you close your hand, the light comes on, and the hand closes. And yes, I can see that with a few iterations on this design, you could make that thing close in a way that would be very useful for picking things up. And soft body robotics is a field that is getting more and more attention because, well, the robots are soft-bodied. There are many situations where you wouldn't want a hard, metallic, or even carbon fiber robot hand to be grabbing sensitive items. So that was the very justified top prize winner of Electromaker of the Month in December, and winners of Electromaker of the Month, the top prize winner, win, as I mentioned, this massive pile of Nordic semiconductor prototyping gear. So congratulations, Lite, this will be coming out to you. And just on a personal note, like your projects, the last 2 projects that you put out about soft body robotics, I find fascinating, and I'm so glad that you're continuing to putting them on the Electromaker community platform. If you would like to talk to me about how you approach doing these things, I would love to chat to you about it because it is such a wonderful thing to be for doing soft body robotics at home with some very basic kit. I'm sure a lot of people will be interested to hear more about that. Anyway, moving on to second place. And in second place this time is a LoRaWAN soil moisture sensor from MakerFabs01. Now, this is a very special build in that it is a completely custom PCB, and it is using both a LoRa module and an RP2040 chip from Raspberry Pi as the brains of the operation and the communication of the operation, along with the Things network as a way of dashboarding and storing all of the data. And one of the things that I really loved about this project, and the judges did as well, is the way that it is documented. So it goes through basically exactly what the plan is, the block diagram of how it will all fit together and how it will work, the difference between LoRa and LoRaWAN. But there's a few things about it that I really like. So for example, if you go down here, it says, okay, so here's a few ways that you can already do this. Here is one with an STM32 controller with a separate external controller. I got that wrong. Here's one which is an STM32 controller built into a LoRaWAN controller. Or you can get a separate controller with a LoRaWAN module. So, for example, this is this little chart here shows it quite nicely. There's the STM32 one, which is cost-effective, but you have to use the filed application codes and LoRaWAN codes. Oh, I see. Sorry, the disadvantage is that all the code runs simultaneously, and it's very hard for coding and transplanting between stuff. Whereas you can use a separate controller and a LoRa module, and that is exactly what they decided to do to have the flexibility. The other thing I like about it is that while this is a wonderful project that worked perfectly, they also went back after the fact and said, what did I learn from this? And one of the things they learned is that for this particular application, they wouldn't use the RP2040 in future, because in their particular application and in the way that they were coding it, they couldn't find a way of making it run with quite as low a power use as the ATmega 328P, which they say they are much more familiar with. So if you're interested in how someone comes up with an idea and then turns it into a project, this is a really good one to read because it goes through a few of the considerations before, during, and after, as well as, of course, exactly how they did it. And down the bottom here, you can grab all of the code and everything you need in order to make one yourself. If you'd like to make the PCB, you could send off and get one of your own build, or of course, remix it and do your own thing with it. Now, third place this month is something that appeals heavily to me for reasons that will become obvious, because it is an ESP32-based Bluetooth Low Energy MIDI foot switch. Now, where music and hardware and DIY hardware intersect is my thing. It's the reason why I don't have a big Eurorack modular synthesizer system, because I have the bits I need to build my own, and I haven't had the time to do it yet. But this fits squarely into that, but in a way that is even more special, because it's the first stomp box I can think of that has a Bluetooth Low Energy connection. Anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. What this is a way of sending MIDI signals via Bluetooth to a computer or to anything that can attach via Bluetooth. The knobs that you're seeing there, they're not just potentiometers, they are rotary encoders, allowing you to switch between different banks of what MIDI signals that can be sent, which is a surprisingly large amount of things you could do with just a few buttons here. So what you're seeing there is some software for affecting a guitar. It's for guitar tone. It has a loop station on it, has all this kind of stuff. As you're seeing now, there's a tuner right there too. And this is all stuff that's being controlled directly from the foot switch. Now, where it gets interesting for me is the fact that it is Bluetooth Low Energy connected. So if you had a laptop with you that you're playing on and you wanted to play out with a laptop, but you didn't necessarily want to do everything from one controller, or let's say you had, like is happening here, a laptop for affecting your guitar, but it also had things like your beats and your backing track on. You could have that on the stage, and then you could be playing a keyboard or anything like that and have a completely hands-free and wire-free system for switching between MIDI things. It's a fantastic idea. It's one of my favorite projects I've seen on the site for a while, and yeah, congratulations, MexBeb. I'm very glad that you were one of the winners this month. Again, if you would like to know more about it, you can click here and it will take you to the actual thing itself, and I would highly recommend watching the video for this one as it goes through in great detail exactly what is happening here. One final thing I may have forgotten to mention, on the side here, which is now hidden behind the YouTube symbol, there is a plugin for an expression pedal, so you can have an analog pedal for changing things like volume and velocity as well. Now, second and third place win two big piles of swag. One is this pile of Nordic swag, which includes a NRF 52840 Bluetooth Low Energy dongle, weirdly enough, which is kind of pairs perfectly with this thing, doesn't it? And you'll also be getting a big pile of Electromaker swag, including one of the very t-shirts you see me wearing on the show right now, and a few other things as well. And yeah, I'd just like to say congratulations to the December winners and to all of the winners of Electromaker of the Month over the last year. This competition is by no means over. It will be continuing on. It may take 1 month break, but I'm not sure exactly when that is going to be. But it will be continuing on. We have a whole host of exciting announcements about the kind of prizes that you can win on Electromaker in the coming year and the way that it will be happening, but it's a little bit too early to be letting that cat out of this particular bag quite yet. But once again, congratulations to the Electromaker of the Month, and I look forward to seeing who will be the next one. We're going to move over now to a guide on the Electromaker website that came out recently on how to build a low-budget electronics workstation. Now, this is something that we get asked quite frequently. How do I get started in this on a low budget? And one of the ways you can do that is just buy an Arduino and learn the coding side of it. There's a lot you can do with just a bare Arduino and a few bits you maybe get with a starter kit. But when you really want to start getting into electronics, you need to get a little bit more kit. And luckily, Robin Mitchell, our resident engineer and educator, was here to help us out with that. So, how to build an electronics workshop for under $100, or £100 as it says there on the screen. It's easier than you think. This is not just a guide of just a few small things. There's actually quite a lot of things involved in this. It goes down to the small details, things like needle nose pliers. Now, you're going to use those more than almost any other thing in your workshop, because you're always bending wires to get them into breadboards, to get them into the right position. I use needle nose pliers surprisingly often when I'm soldering, because I like to bend things exactly into a position that I want them to be to get him to grab the solder, because a lot of the time I'm doing it without a helping hand and I'm holding the solder between these two fingers and the thing I want to solder between these and then that and that. It's a really useful thing to be able to bend them all together. This is what we're talking about. It really does go into the very basics of if you have nothing, what do you need to get a basic electronics workshop up and running? And there's a few cool little curveballs in there as well. Now, the video is absolutely worth watching. Robin goes through every single thing and the reasons behind why he thinks you should have it in your workshop. But one of the things that I think think is really interesting is he picks a Raspberry Pi Pico as something for your workshop, not just for the projects in your workshop. And there's a really cool reason why. By the way, the video that we're looking at is embedded into this blog post, and it's the blog post I'll be linking in the description, because he also writes up all of the different things here that you will want. And some of these things are very obvious, like breadboards and like, various different forms of power, be that breadboard power or battery power, and, a few different things like buttons and inputs. There's a lot of things from Seed Studio. The Grove system is just fantastic. Just plug and play. If you want to test something out very quickly, you don't necessarily always want to be putting things in and out of breadboards. And yeah, Grove is fantastic for that. But my favorite thing in this article is the fact that the Raspberry Pi Pico is here as a tool. Now, it's a bit of a curveball because you'll have to do work before you can even start using it as a tool, but the Raspberry Pi Pico can be used as a bunch of different things. If you don't have a logic analyzer, you can program a Raspberry Pi Pico to be one. And in fact, there is code online that you can just flash straight onto the Raspberry Pi Pico if you're in the beginning of your coding career that will give you a rough amalgamation of a logic analyzer. Is it going to be as good as one that costs hundreds of dollars? No, absolutely not. But the point is the Raspberry Pi Pico costs under $10, and there's so much that you can do with it. And in fact, if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about that, just a little way down in here, we have a guide on exactly how to do something like that. This is how you can build a web-based multimeter using a Raspberry Pi Pico. This is using the Pico W, but yes, this is something that with a few small, simple electronic components, all of which will be very easy to solder using the equipment that you get in the thing that we've just been talking about, you could have a multimeter without even needing to buy a multimeter. Now, that's just one example, but you can apply that to an oscilloscope, you can apply that to a logic analyzer as well. A really interesting choice. Now, if you are interested in looking into any of these, I will link the blog post in the description of the video. I also went through on our Twitter account recently and linked out to all of these things from there as well. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about all those things, you can look on Twitter, you can look on our blog. It's currently sitting right up here at the top of our blog next to Electromaker of the Month, so you can read it there too. Various options as to how you can find it. But I'm very glad that this was made. I was delighted when I saw this pop up, because this is something that was worked on completely in parallel to me. I had no idea it was happening. And starting off an electronics workshop for cheap is one of the things that I get asked frequently how to do. And I usually say the same thing, which is cheap soldering iron, the breadboard, Arduino, all this kind of stuff. But it's really nice hearing from someone who has worked as an engineer, started at the bottom and worked through, and now has quite a lot of nice equipment. But if they had to start again for under $100, this is what Robin would get. It is time to announce the winner of our latest contest, and this was for the Nordic Semiconductor NRF 21540 development bundle. Now, this is a multi-protocol wireless development kit, but it also comes with an extender on it. So this little thing that you're seeing here, well, in fact, you're also seeing here, but it's in a hard to see through static case, is for attaching aerials to for making long-range wireless projects. Now, as you're seeing here, it's a Bluetooth mesh, Thread, Zigbee, and 2.4 gigahertz proprietary range extension. That is what this board is all about. And it includes both the NRF 21540 chip, which is for range extension specifically, and the NRF 52840 system on chip, which is a Bluetooth low energy and multi-protocol system on chip. Now, they started this competition a few weeks ago, and people have been entering by going to the comment section or going to our various social medias and saying what they would do with it and leaving the hashtag NRF21540. And it is now time to pick a winner. But just before we do, if you're interested in what this kind of development kit might do and whether it's something that you might want to get for yourself, or you might want to get a range extended kit, there is a fantastic project using it here on the Electromaker website made by Naveen. And this is essentially using exactly this kit to do the lights up on the balcony just here of his flat, and then using a Nordic Thingy 53 as the control module. But because they're using this development range extender, they can do it from all the way down the street. And if I scoop all the way down here, yes, if I look through here and go like that, what you're seeing is they're all the way down the street, and this is their lights just up here. And when they click the button on the Thingy 53, which I think they have here, you can see that the lights are going to change. Although I might have picked the wrong video for it. Either way, I assure you that is what happens if you come and have a look at this project on the Electromaker projects section, or you can just search for Electromaker user Naveen. You will see a perfect use for exactly this project. But now, it is time to But it's time now to announce the winner, and that winner is Nick Rognus. Now, their comment said they would like to try and convert some of their garden control and sensors over from Wi-Fi to something else, in this case, Bluetooth. And this is the perfect kit for doing that. It is a range extender, and of course the idea being that if you have quite a large garden, you want to be able to pick up those Bluetooth low energy sensors wherever they are. So, congratulations, Nick. We'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this particular prize out to you. We still have a couple of giveaways on the go. I haven't forgotten about the ink plates. We'll be talking about that next week. And we have a lot of exciting giveaways happening this year too. But for now, thank you all so much for giving me your wonderful ideas for what you would do with this development bundle. But yes, let's get on with the rest of the show. We're going to squeeze a very quick funding website things into this show because I saw something on Crowd Supply recently that I really, really love. And that is Lite 3DP Generation 2. Now, Generation 2 because there's already been a Lite 3DP, and this is the size of it. This is not a Photoshop, this is a palm-sized resin printer. And you might wonder why on earth would you want a resin 3D printer that's that small, but it comes with a number of advantages. The first is that you don't waste as much resin as you do with a big resin printer, but the other thing is you use a lot less power. This thing runs at 7 watts, which is less than any other 3D fabrication device that I've ever heard of. And there's a couple of upgrades to exactly how this thing works. The whole idea here is, as it says here, it builds on lessons learned from the first version of Lite 3DP. And there's a few versions of it as well. So an upgraded PCB that they talk about here, there's going to be versions of it with an OLED screen or with a touch screen if you would like that. And lots of parts of this can be 3D printed or put together yourself. It will come as a kit that you can build. And of course, as you can see here, there's lots of lovely 3D printed ways of it working as well. Now, why would you want something this small? Well, you don't always want to make really big prints. A lot of people use these machines for making miniatures, and this is exactly the perfect thing for that. If you're someone who wants to make miniatures for your wargaming setup, yes, okay, it might take a while because you have to do them one at a time, but this is a lovely little idea for that. This could be sitting right here on my desk in front of me, between me and the camera, and you wouldn't be able to see it. It's so small. It's a really nice idea. If you'd like to know more about this project, this is pre-launched, there's no price or anything like that yet. You can always add your name to the box here and hear directly from the manufacturer themselves as to when it will be going live and all that kind of stuff. You can also head to the first version of the Lite 3DP printer and read all about that and the original ideas, and maybe from that you'll be able to get some good ideas as to the changes between this and the new one. But I just really love the idea of someone taking the concept of, a resin 3D printer and saying, well, if we don't need it to be that big, then why have it that big? Why fill a vat with resin if you're only going to make a couple of little models this big? It's just a nice little idea. It's a nice perspective on things, and it's cute. I mean, let's not get away from the fact that it's cute. It's a cute resin printer. Since when have 3D printers been cute? If you are enjoying watching videos on the Electromaker YouTube channel, it would mean a lot if you could head down under whatever video you are watching, i.e. this one, and clicking the subscribe button. Now, YouTube has recently changed. Once you've clicked the subscribe button, there's an extra option you have. You can hit this little drop-down menu, and you can choose to have a different level of subscription notifications. Now, personalized just means it will show up in your subscription menu as always. However, if you click all, it means that in the top corner here, you will get a notification when a new show goes up, or I just got a notification here on a video on this particular YouTube channel I'm using as an example. And as you can see, there's a notification here for our latest Electromaker Educator video, which is how to create an electronics workshop for under $100, which I may or may not have already talked about in this episode. The final thing that you can do on YouTube to help us is by clicking the like button. And I know it's an asinine thing that all YouTubers ask you to do, but it does serve a purpose. Not only does it let us know that you like it, it lets YouTube know that you like this kind of video, and it makes them more likely to recommend it to people with similar viewing habits to you. However, by far the best way you can support the Electromaker Show is by shopping at the Electromaker store. As you can see by the name scrolling across the top of the screen just here, we stock a huge amount of a huge amount of things from a huge amount of people, including Adafruit and Raspberry Pi, Pimoroni, also things like MG Chemicals and Nordic Semiconductor, things that are a bit more industry specific. And yes, we are not immune to the shortages, but we're also finding that our shortages are getting better, just like everyone else's, slowly but surely. So the next time you're thinking of starting a project or starting a new thing at work, head to the Electromaker store to see if we have what you need in stock. We have an excellent Trustpilot score, and of course we're shipping from quite locally here in Europe, so you might get it a little bit quicker than in some other places. Anyway, that is it for the this part of the show. Thank you for your patience. Let's get back to the fun stuff. Up next, we're going to look at a new board from Adafruit, and it is an RP2040 board. Okay, well, big deal. I mean, they already have a few RP2040 boards. No, not quite like this. This is the Adafruit Feather RP2040 Scorpio, which is an 8-channel Neopixel driver. So whether you call them Neopixels or WS8, 12B or whatever their designation is, this is 8 separate channels of addressable LEDs. And as Adafruit says in the very start of the description, if there's one thing Adafruit is known for, it's mega blinky fun rainbow LEDs. And this looks like a pretty special board for exactly that. It's designed with this exactly in mind. It's designed to use the PIO, which is the state machines that come with the RP2040, to their full effect, and there is a full library for it as well. Now, this is the product page for the board. I'm actually not going to link that in the description. What I'm going to link is this overview, because there is a fantastic guide that's been written about it, which goes into a bunch of detail as to how it works, the pinouts, the assembly of it all, and everything you need to know about it as to whether you might want to get one of these things or not. Personally, I could just look at the images of them working all day. I absolutely love this. Look at all the blinking lights. Look at all of the blinking lights. It's amazing. Anyhow, if you are interested in this, head to the link in the description. You can find out where to get one there. Also, you can find out more about this. And just in case you're curious, the library that runs these works in Arduino. It also runs in CircuitPython. No idea about MicroPython at this stage. But yes, there's an Arduino version of the library. And of course, there's a CircuitPython version of the library because that's Adafruit's baby. And there are many times when I prefer CircuitPython over MicroPython as well. But that's a discussion for another day. But if you are looking for a way to run many addressable LEDs at once using a nice simple language like CircuitPython, this board clocking in at around $15 is pretty much one of the easiest ways that you're going to get to do it. Moving over to Arduino and their latest Arduino Pro board. Now, this is the Nicla Voice. The Nicla boards are something that I've thought have been fascinating since their release. Just absolutely tiny, but really, really powerful. It's no surprise to me that they were launched alongside the Potenta boards, because the Potenta are the real powerhouse boards, where these are small, still powerful, but incredibly small form factor boards with lots going on board. And this new upgrade or new version or new variant of it is just absolutely astounding if you look at it on the surface. Obviously, I haven't had a play with this myself yet, but the Nicla Voice has an onboard microphone, it has an onboard inertial measurement unit, it has a long onboard magnetometer, if I remember correctly, and it uses the Syntiant's powerful NDP120 neural decision processor, which is something that at this stage I know absolutely nothing about, so I have no opinion about. I'm going to read up on that and talk about that at some point in the future. But yeah, it's absolutely tiny. The form factor is tiny. It's low power. It's Bluetooth low energy. It can do always on speech recognition on the edge. So on the tiny board itself, it's doing speech recognition. That alone, I know there's boards that do that. I know that isn't necessarily new, but that still kind of blows my mind slightly. It can be like a completely standalone thing. If you look at the version in the store, this is, I imagine, the way that they see it being used. Just stick a battery on it, put it in a case. There's no case there, but and then you have this on the edge voice recognition thing that works via Bluetooth low energy. It knows when it's being moved. It knows when it's being spoken to. There's unsurprisingly a huge amount of things that you could probably do with this. Now, this is the Arduino Pro line, so don't expect to get one of these for the price you would get a Nano. As you can see here, this is at $69. But you're getting a lot more out of this than you would for any kind of mainline Arduino board or any hobby board, really, when you think about it. There are some very cheap kind of edge AI boards out there that you can get off AliExpress, but they're not necessarily that well documented, whereas this is Arduino. You know that they're going to be documenting things really, really well, because the Arduino Pro line are designed to be put into industry and to get things up and running very quickly. They want to be the go-to there. And who wouldn't, you know? But yes, if you'd like to know more about this, you can head to the hardware page that I was just looking at. You've seen all of it with me, really. I mean, it does go through into a lot more detail, but the real key things here is that it's a tiny form factor thing with a mic and a bunch of sensors on it that can do pretty much anything, it seems. I'm really excited. I hope I get my hands on one of these and can have a little play with it before, of course, giving it away. But yes, Arduino Pro boards are going from strength to strength. I talked recently about the Potenta X8 and how exciting that board is, and how it, even despite it being very expensive and very good, it still seems somewhat underrated in many people's eyes. And this board just, I'm very, very excited to have a play with this. I can imagine this being one of the coolest wearable badges, by the way. Can you imagine having a badge with a little screen attached to it that knows how you move, knows how you speak, and never has to connect to the internet? Bah! That has been our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for all the support that you continue to show the Electromaker Show, be that by subscribing to the Electromaker YouTube channel or clicking like on this video, or a more directly financial thing like going to the Electromaker store and buying the things you need for your next hobby project or gifts or whatever. All of these things directly help this show and they allow me to continue doing it, so thank you so much for doing them. Now, we'll be back next week with another show, and there are going to be some really nice, fun changes happening slowly over the next little while, and we have some new forms of competition starting. There's going to be some new, more focused videos about different devices and products and things like that, which I'm very excited to see. And of course, I will always be here to talk about the latest funding website things and cool maker projects and all that kind of stuff. I'm really excited to go on this little bit of a journey. But for now, I wish you a safe, fun, and creative week, and I'll chat to you next time.